Today's session is on foreign trade policy. The policy is issued by the Government of India, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, under Section 5 of the Foreign Trade Development Regulation Act 1992. It is usually kept valid for a period of 5 years, but during the course of that period of 5 years, the government may subject the policy to amendment and modifications as may be required. Now, the purpose of issuing the policy is to spell out the government's policy to restrict, control, prohibit, allow import or export of goods with or without conditions. Now, these prohibitions or restrictions on import or export usually function to protect agriculture, industry or save forensic, or which is known as import substitution. Prohibitions as far as exports are concerned, usually that is to protect flora, fauna, rare or endangered species, and to ensure adequate availability of goods for domestic consumption whenever there are shortages in India of such goods or whenever the prices rise too high. Government issues a supplement to the import policy, foreign trade policy, what is known as import trade control harmonized system based policy. Now, the goods are listed in terms of the harmonized system, and one will find against each entry certain words such as free, restricted, prohibited or state enterprise indicated. When we read the word free, we understand that as the goods are freely importable without any restrictions, controls, and the import can be made by all persons. Vast majority of the goods, such goods which are listed as free category are in the policy. When the goods are indicated as restricted, against an entry there is a word indicated as restricted, it means that the import will be allowed to the person who desires to import only under an application for issue of a license or permit, and the government, if it approves the application, such application, it will specify exactly the description, quality, quantity, value of the goods allowed to be imported, the validity up to which it will be allowed to be imported, and terms, conditions which the importer has to comply with for the purpose of getting such a facility of being allowed a restricted item to be imported. There are very few items which are under the restricted category in the present policy. When an item is listed as a prohibited item, it means it is absolutely prohibited, and the government under no circumstance, even the smallest possible quantity will be allowed, whatever may be the justification. There are very few such items, and usually they are of sensitive nature. Now, for imports and exports, when they are free, largely, or when they are restricted, where it is possible to import under a permit or a license, every person who wants to import or export goods will have to obtain from the Director General of Foreign Trade under an application a permanent 10-digit enrollment number known as an import or export code number, which is mandatorily required. Chapter 2 of the Foreign Trade Policy and the Handbook of Procedure, Volume 1, specifies the policy procedures for obtaining the import or export code number. All importers and exporters, whether they operate in their commercial capacity or industrial capacity or institutional or in professional capacity, mandatorily require the IEC number for clearing through customs imported or exported goods. Without an IEC number, usually an import or export clearance will not be allowed. The customs computer system will not allow the documents to move forward in the system if a blank space is left for the place where IEC number is to be inserted, or dash 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 is written, or XXX or 00 or not applicable is written, that will not be valid for entering data for the purpose of clearance of exports, imported goods and export. There is another place where the IEC has to be used and mentioned in forms documents that are being filled up. That is when exporters claim export promotion benefits which are granted on pre-export or post-export basis. They require to fill up the IEC number wherever such column is provided. Again there, the online system or even otherwise, the physical or manual system will not accept an application without the mentioning of an IEC number. At times, even photocopies may have to be furnished of the IEC number. So, IEC number in short is a 10-digit mandatory required enrollment by every exporter importer. It is not a license, it is not a permit, it is not about goods, it is only about the person or the people who have applied for, their name, address, head offices, branches, details, whether they are manufacturer or merchant exporter or service provider or any other category, their bank account details, their income tax PAN number details. So, it only identifies the applicant, the partners, proprietors, directors as the case may be, who are the owners or the operators of that firm company, and the PAN number identity of the company or firm which has applied for, and bank details. It is only a numerical identity required for the purpose of filling it up in customs related documents, foreign trade policy related documents whenever such an occasion appears. It is valid for lifetime, and it is not about items, goods, it is only about the identity of the people who have applied for it. There are persons and entities who are exempted from obtaining IEC, and they are listed in Chapter 2 of the Foreign Trade Policy, and the examples are diplomatic missions including United Nations offices in India, government departments, certain specified charities, persons exporting, importing for their personal use, not connected with trade, commerce, agriculture or industry, and quite a few other categories of importers who should not be subjected to obtaining IEC for the purpose and the reason stated. Now, for such entities and persons, the government has printed permanent IEC numbers. So, such persons also feel when importing, exporting, although they are exempted from obtaining IEC number, will fill up the IEC number that has been printed in the foreign trade policy, what is known as a permanent IEC number. So, if one person is exporting gift, he will write that IEC number. If another person is exporting gift, he will also write the same IEC number. There are certain categories like border trade between Nepal and Bhutan, India and Nepal and Bhutan, India and Myanmar up to 25,000 rupees per transaction, and with China up to 1 lakh rupees per export or import transaction, where IEC number is not required, and the permanent IEC number indicated in the policy will be used by the person who is carrying out such transaction. Now, that was about Chapter 2. The policy is divided into 8 chapters. The first chapter is about, generally speaking, about the legal provisions and certain government's approach to promote exports and import. Chapter 2 is about general licensing procedures. Chapter 3, 4, 5 and 6 are about export promotion scheme. Chapter 7 has been left blank. Earlier it was for the SEZ scheme. Chapter 8 is about deemed exports, transaction which take place within India. Supply of goods is within India, but because of a certain special situation, such transactions are considered equal to exports, so they are called deemed export. And Chapter 9 is about definitions of words and phrases used in the policy. Now, let us discuss certain important chapters within the policy which are relevant to exporters in general. Chapter 3 is there, which is known as the reward scheme. Chapter 4 is there, which is known as the advance authorization scheme, or rather more appropriately the duty exemption scheme. Chapter 5 is also an exemption scheme, but pertaining to machineries which the exporters require for production and export of goods out of the machineries being used. Chapter 6 is about 100% export oriented units who happen to be located at any place in India which is approved for the purpose of 100% production for exports. Now, let us start with Chapter 4 first, then we will move to Chapter 5 and then we will move to Chapter 3. Chapter 4 is popularly known as the advance authorization scheme or the duty exemption scheme. Now, under this chapter, the government grants a facility of duty-free clearance of imported inputs, that is raw materials, components, parts, consumable, accessories, packing materials required for the purpose of manufacture and export of the finished goods out of them. So the policy spells out the scheme whereby the exporters can have access to duty-free imports for the purpose of manufacture and export. It is applicable to registered exporters. That is, the person applying, who may be a manufacturer or a merchant exporter, has to be registered with the concerned Export Promotion Council or Commodity Board or Export Development Authority. There is a compulsory online application. So the person concerned has to obtain a dongle for digital certification of his signature, and the government fees have to be paid through what is known as electronic funds transfer system. On the basis of application, where the exporter concerned who wishes to avail this facility specifies the export products which he intends to export in terms of description, quantity, characteristics, quality and quantity as well as value. In relation to that, he further specifies in the application the corresponding inputs which are required in terms of the description, quality, technical characteristics and the quantity including allowable wastage and scrap which he can claim, and the total value of imports. Now, there will be other conditions like that. In order to fulfill all the terms and conditions of this scheme, the exporter has to bind himself that he will maintain the minimum value addition that is required for the purpose of exporting these goods. He will fulfill the input-output ratio, or is maintain the input-output ratio. He will complete the export obligation, that is, he binds himself to export the particular quantity of export goods which he has declared in his application in relation to the duty-free imports that he clears within a certain time limit, and the export value is realized within the RBI prescribed time limit. There are other conditions like actual user conditions, and the exporter on the basis of his application obtains what is known as an advance authorization which specify the details of the goods to be exported and the corresponding imports that will be allowed duty free. He first takes the authorization to the custom authority at the port where he intends to import, which is known as the port where the registration takes place, and furnishes a bond and in some cases a bank guarantee for promising the government that he will fulfill the obligations and the conditions and restrictions that have been imposed under the scheme. On the basis of the furnishing of the bond and bank guarantee, if applicable, customs authorities will allow clearance of the imported inputs duty free, and the importer has to take the duty free cleared goods to the factory which has been mentioned in the authorization or any other factory which he owns, but which should be mentioned in the authorization, or at a later stage he can get it included in those. Once he has received such goods, he is subject to what is known as actual user condition. That is, he should use the goods for the purpose for which this benefit has been granted. He should not part with the goods, should not sell such goods, and he should not dispose such goods or not even loan such goods to anyone. The goods should be available at his factory premises as raw materials or semi-finished goods or finished goods, or at best they may be at the job worker's premises where he has forwarded for job working under an excise procedure. Now, once the manufacturing is over, he starts exporting the goods, and at the time of shipment of each such quantity of goods, he has to declare the advance authorization particulars in each of the shipping bills which he has filed in discharge of the export obligation. Customs will verify the nexus between what has been allowed as import and what has been manufactured and what is being exported, to check whether there is any mischief being played, whether any misuse of the facility is being practiced by the person who is, or do the goods really match with the quality, description, technical characteristics of the inputs that were allowed duty free. And if an exporter has completed 100% fulfillment of 100% export obligation in terms of description, quality, technical characteristics, quantity, value, and later on he realizes the value in foreign exchange, and if he is able to square up the accounts as to what was allowed as import, what he had really imported, what was the corresponding export obligation against what he had really exported, what were the exports 1, 2, 3, 4, what were the exports that he had made in discharge of the obligation, and he will approach the joint DGFT office which has issued such authorization for closure of the case, or in other words known as issue of export obligation discharge certificate. The joint DGFT office, on verification of the details furnished, documents like shipping bills, bank certificate realization, and certain statements and certain declarations, if satisfied, will issue an export obligation certificate, discharge certificate, addressed to the customs authorities where the authorization had been registered, and the custom authorities will also from their side verify the export details, and if they are satisfied, will redeem the bond and including the bank guarantee that would have been furnished. Now, by chance, if an exporter fails to fulfill 100% of the export obligation, let us take an example, he has fulfilled 90% of the export obligation, 10% remains to be fulfilled, and now he is sure that he will not be able to fulfill that 10%. He can voluntarily approach the customs authority that for the 10% surplus imported goods quantity that is with him, which is with him, for the reason that he has not been able to export the remaining 10%, he is willing to pay the applicable customs duty and interest on that from the date of importation till the date of payment. The custom will accept that payment, and then he will approach the joint DGFT for issue of export obligation discharge certificate on the basis of fulfillment, let us say in this case up to 90%, and repayment of customs duty saved with interest up to 10%. Now, if there are cases where people misuse the facility, sale of the imported duty-free materials in the market, do not complete export obligation, and do not approach the government for payment of import duty which is bound to pay, the government will recover the import duty from him, and the case will be adjudicated against him, and the custom authorities will recover the customs duties that were saved, plus interest on that at 18% per annum from the date of import till the date of payment, and a penalty which may extend up to 100% if it is a case of violation. If it is purely a case of non-fulfillment and the exporter has not sold off the goods, the raw materials are with him or they are with him in the semi-finished form or finished form, and he has not sold off this material market, and he has already approached the government to repay the duty, there will be no penalty imposed, only the custom duty amount and interest will have to be repaid as has already been stated earlier. Let us now discuss Chapter 5 of the Foreign Trade Policy. We had earlier discussed Chapter 4, which was in relation to raw material, components, parts, consumable, accessories, packing material required for manufacture export goods, and under Chapter 4, the government allows duty-free clearance of such imported inputs for the purpose of manufacture and export of goods subject to several terms, conditions, restrictions, obligations and liabilities under that chapter as already discussed. Now, there is a similar chapter, Chapter 5, but this relates to machineries, plants, equipments required for manufacture and export of goods. It can include machineries which are used at the pre-production stage, production stage and post-production stage. And there can be machineries like laboratory equipments, refrigeration plant, air conditioning plant, forklift trucks, overhead chain pulley blocks, etc., whatever, which do not directly contribute to the production, but which are required either at pre or during or post-production stage for carrying out the entire export operation. Like the earlier scheme, the exporter has to be registered exporter. He has to file an application under what is known as the EPCG scheme, the Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme, specifying the details of the capital goods which he intends to import and clear duty free under this scheme. He can include up to 20% replacement parts which he may require during the same year or in future for the purpose of maintenance of machine. All this will be allowed duty free under the scheme. Now, the Director General of Foreign Trade will issue an EPCG authorization specifying the details of the machine, plant, equipment, and the export obligation against it. Unlike Chapter 4, where the export obligation is strictly in terms of quantity of the imports that has been allowed and the corresponding quantity of the export goods that are capable of being manufactured out of such goods, here in this scheme, Chapter 5, there cannot be a quantity to quantity relationship. The only relationship that can be is the value of exports that should be required to be made towards completion of export obligation discharge. So the government at present in the scheme have fixed that whatever may be the duty amount saved, 6 times the value of the duty amount saved, goods capable of being manufactured by using these machineries should be exported within 6 years. But there will be an additional export obligation also, or rather it is known as the past annual average export performance plus additional export obligation in terms of the amount of duty saved. So the past 3 years annual average of the exports, that much export obligation will be fixed for the particular authorization. In addition to that, an amount equal to 6 times of the duty amount saved for 6 years will be the additional export obligation. Now, on the basis of this authorization, the importer will import the goods and try to clear it through customs under the duty-free notification or dispensation. A bond and bank guarantee will be required to be furnished, promising to pay back the duty amount saved or to pay penalties that may be applicable in case there is violation of the scheme or non-fulfillment of the scheme. On the basis of bond and bank guarantee and registration of the authorization and inspection of the imported machine, tallying the machines with the details in the authorization, if satisfied, the customs authority will allow duty-free clearance of the imported machines, which should be brought to the factory address which was indicated in the application and install them. Within 6 months from the date of import clearance or extension allowed, the importer will have to get a certificate issued by the excise authorities if he is under excise control, or by a chartered engineer if he is not under excise control, establishing that the machinery has been installed and is in operation. Such installation certificate will have to be furnished to the custom authorities through which the import clearance had taken place, and also through the joint DGFT office which had issued the authorization. Once the exporter has received the machine, he can start discharging export obligation, exporting goods which are capable of being manufactured using such a, and the export obligation will start from the date of issue of the authorization, irrespective of the date of import and the date of installation. And that way the exporter starts exporting goods. Each time he files a shipping bill for exporting such goods, he will declare in the shipping bill that such and such export is in discharge of obligation under such and such EPCG authorization that he has obtained. He can simultaneously indicate, if he has obtained the Chapter 4 benefit, that simultaneously this export is also under advance authorization number so and so, dated so and so, and the export of such goods, whether for the purpose of fulfillment of export obligation for the benefits that had been taken under Chapter 4 or the benefits that had been taken under Chapter 5 or both, the same export will be counted for export obligation discharge under both the schemes. Having done that, the exporter has to file yearly statements of progressive export certified by a chartered accountant and also certified bank about realization of payment in foreign exchange. And that way, within the span of 6 years, whenever he feels that he has completed export obligation, to the extent it was required to be made in relation to the duty saved amount, and to the extent it was required to be made in relation to the past annual average, at any time between those 6 years period, with the yearly statements and a consolidated statements of progressive exports discharge, he can approach the joint DGFT office for issue of export obligation discharge certificate. The joint DGFT office, after verifying the details, satisfying itself that the export obligation has really been discharged, will issue an export obligation discharge certificate. The exporter will take the export obligation discharge certificate to the custom authorities where the authorization was registered and where bond and bank guarantee had been furnished, and furnish whatever details the customs authorities require for the purpose of ascertaining that exports had really taken place, and such exports can be counted towards export obligation discharge as far as that particular authorization is concerned. The customs will redeem the bond and bank release and give you. If there are situations where partial export obligation has not been fulfilled, the exporter can always come forward, pay the proportionate amount of duty saved and interest on that, and on that basis get discharge certificate on the basis of exports made to the extent they had been made and the duty that has been paid to the extent there was a non-fulfillment of expense. If there are violations of the scheme, let us say an exporter sells off the machine, doesn't export, fails to export, then the bank guarantee will be invoked, customs duty will be recovered even if a bank guarantee has not been delivered, where exemption from bank guarantee has been granted with interest. We will now be discussing Chapter 3 of the Foreign Trade Policy. Earlier, we had discussed Chapter 4 and 5 of the Foreign Trade Policy. Those chapters relate strictly to the raw material components, parts, etc. required for the manufacture of export goods, and likewise the machinery required for manufacture of such goods. And the relief of saving custom duty is strictly related to the product that are going to be exported, and the raw materials or the machinery is related to those products. And there is, in case of Chapter 4, that is advance author, there is a quantity to quantity relationship, quality to quality relationship, and the exporter gets the benefit at pre-export stage, and he only manages to save customs duty which otherwise would have been payable had he not opted for the scheme. These are known as export promotion scheme. Now, government have recently introduced certain scheme known as reward scheme under Chapter 3 of the following trade policy. This is a post-export scheme which allows certain exporters of certain products a certain higher level of benefit or incentive, that is a duty saving instrument or duty saving device, although they have already saved duty under Chapter 4 or 5 which we have discussed earlier. Now, the purpose of Chapter 3 is to reward exporters with extra duty-free benefit so that certain products to certain markets which are difficult to be exported, the government helps the exporter to promote enter such market. Products are listed under what is known as focus product scheme, focus market scheme, market link focus products, Vishesh Krushi Gramin Upaj Yojana, served from India scheme. There are a few other schemes under Chapter 3, but the most important one and most used ones are the focus product scheme, the focus market scheme, the market link focus product scheme, and the Vishesh Krushi Gramin Upaj Yojana. Whenever goods are listed under focus product scheme, there may be about 2,000-3,000 entries, goods listed by their HS code numbers and description of goods. And if the exporter finds that what he has exported falls under the focus product scheme list, then apart from whatever other benefits he is obtaining like drawback or instead of drawback, duty-free import under Foreign Trade Policy Chapter 4 plus the EPCG scheme, he will get in addition to that a focus product scheme benefit, and these are from 2% of the FOB value of exports to about 5% of the FOB value of export. Now, when a product is listed under focus product scheme, the exporter at the time of export, in the shipping bill, if it is not under any export promotion scheme, in other words, if it is a free goods shipping bill, then he will have to necessarily declare that he intends to claim the Chapter 3 benefit. But by chance, if his shipping bill also covers other benefits like drawback or advance authorization or DFIA or EPCG scheme or any one of these, then he need not declare, he can voluntarily declare that he intends to claim Chapter 3 benefit. Otherwise, he will be still entitled to Chapter 3 benefit. Now, having exported, he will file an application for claiming such benefit after realization of the export produce. Likewise, there are countries listed as focus market scheme countries, some 60-70 countries, and if there are exports of any products, unlike focus product where listed products only qualify for the benefit, if there are export of any products to such markets, then the exporter will get that type of benefit if he is entitled. Likewise, the scheme is divided into another portion which is known as focus market product link. A market is stated and certain number of products are stated against that listed country, and if by chance the product and the market both match and the exporter has made export to such product to such a market, he will be entitled to focus market product link scheme benefit. And some of the exporters who are exporters of agriculture commodities, Gramin commodities, and if their products are listed under the Vishesh Krushi Gramin Upaj Yojana scheme, they will be entitled to 5% of the FOB value of exports as duty-free scrip. In all these schemes, the exporter earns what is known as a duty-free scrip. Now, having exported, having realized a payment, having filed an application for any one of these benefits, and let me emphasize that simultaneously no two benefits can be claimed, only one benefit out. By chance a product falls under focus product scheme and the market is also listed under focus market scheme, only one of the two benefits would be available, not any one or several of them. These are known as duty credit scrips. The entitlement is granted by of a duty amount that the exporter has earned against his export under the scheme, and it will be registered at the place from where the export had taken place with the customs authority. And the customs authority will allow duty-free import clearance of any restricted or unrestricted item which is capable of being imported under the foreign trade policy, and duty-free to the extent the amount that is indicated in scheme. Now, these scrips can be used by the person who has exported goods if he intends to use himself, but he can sell off the scrips in the market to other persons who might be interested in using such scrips for duty clearance of whatever goods they import. In case of Chapter 4 or Chapter 5, you would have observed that there has got to be a clear nexus between the products being exported and the type of raw materials being used or the type of machineries being used. And there has got to be a strict correlation between the two. Here, there is no question of correlation under Chapter 3. Whatever may be the goods that have been exported, imports of goods will be any goods. They can be consumer goods, goods which are in the restricted category, goods which are in the free category. To that extent, the duty amount indicated in the script will be saved by whoever happens to import. And when duties are debited to these scrips, the duties will be basic duties of customs, additional duties of customs, special additional duties of customs, and the education cess. Now, if the import is of raw material components parts, and the scrip has been debited for clearance of such raw material components parts, and the person who has imported the raw material components parts uses the raw material components parts in his factory for the manufacture of excisable goods, to the extent that the additional custom duty that has been debited to the scrip and the special additional duty that has been debited to the scrip, he will be able to claim SENVAT credit, though he has not paid the amount to the custom authority in cash, though it is by way of a debit entry in the scrip, but by provision in the law, he is entitled to obtain SENVAT credit if it is applicable. Now, there has been a provision added recently to this scheme that instead of importing such goods, if an importer wishes to purchase such goods from the domestic market, then the domestic supplier will against debit in this scrip will be able to supply him goods without excise duty But the person buying such goods without excise duty by debit to the scrip will be able to claim Senvat credit of the amount that has been debited as if it is payment. Under the foreign trade policy, we have discussed certain export promotion schemes. For example, Chapter 4 duty exemption scheme for raw materials, Chapter 5 duty exemption scheme for machineries, plant machinery equipment, Chapter 3 reward schemes as a bonus against exports already made related to certain markets, certain products. And now we will be discussing Chapter 6 of the foreign trade policy, what is popularly known as the 100% export oriented scheme. Exporters who do not wish to operate under the Chapter 4 and 5 of the foreign trade because it is tedious for them to keep on applying for advance authorization EPIS every now and then, maintain records, furnish bonds and bank guarantees, close the accounting with the joint DGFT authority, close the accounting with the customs, redeem bond and bank guarantee, have an option to opt for what is known as 100% export oriented scheme. This is under the policy, and a person who desires to establish a new unit as a 100% export oriented or convert his existing unit into a 100% export oriented unit will approach the development commissioner under whose control the export oriented units are operating, and the development commissioner is under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and there will be a proposal submitted for approval to operate as a 100% export oriented. The development commissioner, having considered the proposal, issues a letter of intent, a letter of permit, which enables the concerned applicant to establish a new factory as a 100% export oriented or convert his existing factory into a 100% export oriented unit. Now, by definition, a 100% export oriented unit is an island by itself, that is where production process is allowed under duty free atmosphere subject to 100% exports. Whatever the 100% export oriented unit wants by way of imported goods, that will be allowed duty free clearance with a notification issued by the Department of Revenue supporting the clearance. Likewise, whatever he buys from the domestic tariff area, he will be able to procure such goods excise free. The state governments in the state where the 100% export oriented units are located may exempt the 100% export oriented from levy of sale tax on what they purchase from others. The development commissioner will give refund of the CST that is payable when the 100% export oriented unit purchases goods from state other than the state where he is located. So that way all his procurement by way of imports or domestic procurements are excise free or customs duty free or sale tax free. And having received whatever is required as capital goods, plant, machinery, equipment imported or domestically procured, or raw material components, parts, etc., imported or domestically procured, sale tax free, excise free and customs duty free, now he is under obligation to manufacture and export 100% of whatever he produces in the factory. Now, there are flexibilities allowed that it may not be possible to 100% export the entire production. So, there are provisions that against 100 rupees worth of exports, up to 50 rupees worth of goods he can sell in the domestic tariff, the rest of India, subject to duties of customs or excise as may be applicable, which will include waste and scrap generated during the production process, rejects which are not exportable but which may find a market in India, and goods which are not rejected but which are surplus to his production and which is not able to export. So, approximately quantity wise it will be 1/3 domestic sale and 67% exports. So, let us say about 70% export should be there and about 30% can be sold in the domestic market subject to duties of customs and excise as may be applicable. But there is a condition that the exporter, such exporter should achieve net foreign exchange earning as a percentage of export in a positive manner. That is, whatever he has realized as far as exports are concerned, there are domestic sales also. So domestic sales do not fetch him foreign exchange. Exports alone fetch him foreign exchange. So the foreign exchange that is realized against exports, out of that, if the import of machineries and raw materials plus any other expenditure by way of commission payable to foreign exchange, interest payable on external commercial borrowings, travel, etc., whatever money goes out by way of foreign exchange for his operations, and whatever he achieves by way of foreign exchange realizes exports value in foreign exchange. Against that, he pays money in foreign exchange for import of goods which we have already specified earlier, like raw materials, machineries, etc. And he spends other money by way of interest payable on external commercial borrowing, commission payable to foreign agent. So there will be outgo of foreign exchange for such activities, and there will be inflow of foreign exchange for the exportsman. The condition that the inflow minus the outflow should result into a positive figure, it should not be negative. With these conditions, the 100% EOU operates as an export-oriented unit, dedicated largely to 100% exports, except to the extent that the domestic tariff area sales are allowed to him. Now, that way he can continue up to 5 years, and beyond 5 years he can seek an extension within 6 months after the expiry of 5 years, and he can continue as long as he wants to continue to operate as a 100% export-oriented unit. But there may come a stage in future where he wants to de-bond from what is known as the 100% export-oriented unit status. That is, he wants to restart and operate as a domestic tariff area unit as earlier. That is known as the procedure of de-bonding. Whenever there is a proposal to de-bond, the development will consider that the application for de-bonding and will give him an in-principle approval to de-bond. Then the concerned EOU, wherever it is located, will approach the local excise authorities where he had also executed bond to operate within the notification, customs and excise notification pertaining to EOU, and complete an accounting procedure in what is known as payment of duties. Duties on what? Duties on machineries, plant, equipment which he had procured either from abroad by saving customs duty or by saving excise duty procured from the domestic market. Now, there are certain scales of depreciation allowed, and after deducting the depreciation from the original purchase cost, on the residual value, he will have to pay the current customs duty on whatever machineries he had imported duty free, and the current excise duty on whatever machineries he had procured from the domestic market by savings excise duty. If there is surplus of raw material, then on the raw material purchase value he will have to pay current duty. If there are semi-finished goods, then on the raw material contained in the semi-finished goods he will have to pay the current customs duty. And if there are some finished goods which are not exported, he will have to pay customs duty on the imported goods and clear the goods out of his EOU as if he is removing them from the EOU into the domestic tariff area. Of course, he will retain the goods inside his factory, but it will be deemed to have been cleared out of them. And then he can start operating as a EOU. Instead of an EOU, he can start operating as a domestic tariff area unit.